Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kristen Biermeyer. I'm the marketing manager at Wagner CPAs, and I'm so glad to have you all join us this morning for an introduction to LeaseCrunch. The presentation will be recorded today, and I will be emailing that to you along with the slide deck after the event, so keep an eye for that. Feel free to submit any questions you have during the webinar through the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. We'll be leaving some time at the end of the presentation to address those questions. And with that, I will turn you over to a partner at Wagner CPAs, Tim Seidel.
Thanks, Kristen. Good morning, everybody. As Kristen mentioned, I'm a partner at Wagner CPAs in our audit and our outsourced accounting practices here. With me, I have Abby, who is our representative for LeaseCrunch. And we have about an hour slated for today's webinar, but odds are probably pretty good that we'll only need about half that time, but we wanted to make sure to leave enough time for questions, so we didn't necessarily get into a crunch kind of right at the end. And I guess with that, I'll let Abby introduce herself and we'll get started.
Cool. Well, hi, everyone. My name's Abby. I have been working with Wagner over here at LeaseCrunch for a few months now, and we thought that this would be a good way to get all of you started and comfortable with this new solution. Like Tim said, I mean, honestly, these calls, this is probably going to take about 20 minutes, depending on the questions, the number of questions we have at the end. With that being said, if you do have any questions throughout the demo and the presentation, please just throw that in the chat and I will answer that at the end of the call. So before we dive into what ASC 842 is, we can talk about where it started. I think most of us are probably aware it's been delayed a couple times, but it's really here now for good. This is it. So the rule now is the fiscal year starting after December 15th, 2021. So in other words, anyone with a January 1st fiscal year 2022 is your initial application date. And so the goal of FASB was to increase the transparency and comparability among organizations by recognizing lease assets and lease liabilities on the balance sheet. This adds on operating leases to the balance sheet in the form of ROU assets and lease liabilities alongside finance leases. Finance leases were called capital leases under 840, but now they've moved over to, but they were classified correctly. They were already on the balance sheet. ASC 842 removes deferred rent and prepaid expenses and expands the quantitative footnote. So the footnote is a little bit more complicated. I will show you what that looks like. And so with the new complicated standard, I'm sure it's very tempting to have these spreadsheets. One thing I want to note is that the spreadsheets are not going to be free, because unless you have one very simple unchanging lease, you're going to have to go into that spreadsheet and update it throughout the year and throughout the lease term. If your calculations are incorrect, you're now going to have Wagner go in and audit it, which will also cost money. It's error prone if you have your formulas and equations in there incorrectly. And also that footnote is more complicated as well. So this solution is here to not only save you time, but save you money as well, and make it so that you don't have to do these calculations. It'll automatically do it for you. And I will show you how you can add a lease in about 2 minutes, and then it'll take care of that for you throughout the lease term. And this is that footnote. So what you're probably used to seeing is just the maturity analysis down here. This is what it looks like with ASC 842 now. There is a lot more information. It's really good. There's a lot more visibility and transparency to the auditing team to be able to go in and see what else is going on with this lease. It does make it a little more difficult to update. All right, with that being said, let's jump into a demo of the software. So when you sign in, first it's going to ask you to do the live login or the demo login. Demo is where you can practice adding leases. It is not where you're going to want to go and add actual leases. You are also not able to change, if you enter a lease in demo, you cannot automatically switch it to live. So please make sure that you're using demo just to practice different features, but that you're entering all your real leases in live. We also do go into demo and update and change and delete things occasionally. So your leases in demo aren't necessarily going to stay there. So please use demo for practice and live for your real leases. I am looking at this from the firm view. So I'm going to click on a company. This is now what it'll look like for you as your login. The only difference I will show you under the administration tab. But when you first log into your account, you're going to see all of your different leases. And this is also where you're going to go to run reports. Once you have access, someone is going to be created as an admin user. The admin users are going to be able to go into this administration tab and go through all of these different tabs. So the administrator is going to be able to invite in users to the software. So it might not just be you entering leases for your company. You might also be adding other users. You would go in and add their email, first and last name, and then select their role. You can have a little key down here of the abilities for the roles. So read only can view leases and run reports. They can't add or change anything. Users can add leases, edit, review and approve, and run reports. Administrators are able to add leases, run reports, make modifications, but they're also able to go in and add users, and they're able to go in and use these different administrator tabs. Only administrators can change things under the administration tab. User tab, invite in your user. Group tab, invite in whole groups of people. Policies. So this is the major thing that's different when you are a client user in here. You will be able to click or unselect this little box. Because I'm viewing it as a firm user, I'm not able to select or unselect. What would happen if you were a user and you unclicked this? That would mean that your team over at Wagner no longer has access to your account. I do not recommend you unclicking this, because then they are not able to go in and see your leases and help you out. That's why they're here. They're here to help you. So please make sure you keep this selected if you want them to have access to your account. They're not going to go in and change anything without you knowing. Then we have a couple wizards throughout the program to help you navigate different, more complicated things. So there's a lease term wizard, and then there's a lease classification wizard. If I were to select these, it would be required that I use those wizards when I get to them in the program. I'm not going to select them, but I will show you what those look like when we get to those. There's also a review and approve option in here. What that means is once I add a lease, if I had this selected, the lease isn't going to go live until somebody else on the team has gone in, reviewed the lease, made sure everything's right, and then select approve. I will not select that either, but I will show you what that looks like as well. And then down here is your lease accounting policy documents. You would select whichever one you're using, 842, IFRS 16, or the combination of the two. You can go in, upload it, and then add little notes and stuff in there for your own reference. Reporting entity. This is where I'm really going to challenge you when you first get access to the software through Wagner, you first start adding your users and whatnot. I'm going to challenge you to have adding your reporting entity be one of the first things you do. Once you add your reporting entity, you've given it a name, you've selected your standard, and you've selected the correct initial application date. Once you've done all that, that's when you're going to be able to go in and add your different leases. So once you create that reporting entity, there's really nothing stopping you from starting to add those leases, which I think is kind of a daunting task for a lot of people. So it's much easier to get started once you add that reporting entity. Customization, you're able to go in and add and delete different asset types, cost centers, and fields, as well as adding and deleting different lessors. One thing I do want to note is you will not be able to delete anything that is already tied into an active lease. So if I were to try and delete building, you're going to get this little error message. You can't delete it because I already have an active lease. with a building asset type in there. That way, nothing that is required is getting deleted from your leases. Going into the GL accounts, you would select your reporting entity, and it's going to give you the operating lease and the finance lease. You can go in and select edit and rename these things. I know that the GL numbers aren't necessarily going to be exactly what is in system. And for you, it might be something completely different or with a name. So you can go in and rename that. And then you also have a currency tab if you're using any foreign exchange rates. So that is everything for the administrator tabs. And now I'm going to show you the fun part of adding a lease. Once you get the hang of it, 2 to 3 minutes to add a lease. We do have a bulk import template over here. If you have a whole Excel spreadsheet where you've been keeping track of your leases and you just want to copy and paste it into the bulk upload, you can do that. The formulas are correct. If you have, I would say, less than 20 leases, adding them one by one in the program is going to be pretty much the same time. But if you have a whole spreadsheet, copying and pasting and going through these steps with maybe more than 20 will save you a little bit of time. So with that being said, let's add a lease. Everything over here with a red asterisk is going to be required. Everything else is optional. So I'm going to select my reporting entity. It already knows that I'm using United States dollar. And I am going to give it a name. So today, let's say 11 days till Christmas, because that's what I was just told. And now that's very much on my mind. Don't name your leases this. This is just a silly name because I have a required name and I'm doing this for the demo. You can give it a description, a manufacturer, and then we're going to go down to our asset type that is required. I'm going to select a building. I can give it a size, location, lessor, and that brings us down to our first wizard. If I had selected to have the wizard required, these would be grayed out and I wouldn't be able to click on them. I did not say that it was required, so I can go in and just say I have a 5-year, 60-month lease. It started at the beginning of the month. But if I were needing the wizard, I could click it, and what it's going to do is ask me a few different questions. It's going to say, what is your initial start and end date, or the term that you have? And then it's going to ask me, are you planning on terminating early? And if so, what does that date look like? Are you planning on renewing the lease? And if so, what would that end date look like? And then it's going to finish, and it would give me, depending on those answers, what my end date would be. Because I didn't change anything, it's just going to give me that end date of 11/30/2027. Then it goes down to some more optional inputs of comments, custom fields, lease admin, or signer. So now I've added that lease. That brings us to payment and classification. So first, you're going to add your discount rate. If you're not sure your discount rate, you can go in throughout the program. You will see these little question marks. That's going to take us over to our help page. What it's done is in our help page, you can have the technical guidance. This is directly word for word from the standard. If you enjoy reading that type of thing, more power to you. I'm not a word for word technical type of gal. So I like to go up to the summary guidance. This is where our experts have gone in. They've read the boring stuff and they've summarized it into plain English. I always check the summary. Some people really like that technical guidance. Again, that is fully up to you. But what it's saying is this is the discount rate if you need to this is where you can go if you need help with figuring out your discount rate. We have a calculator you can download. We also have a link to the US Treasury rate. I do not know what your discount rate is. If you're unsure, if you need some help, please reach out to your Wagner contact. Any incentives received, you add it over here. And then it goes down to the payment stream. So are you going to want to pay monthly, quarterly, or yearly? I'm going to say monthly. And let's say that I am paying $5,000 a month for the entirety of the lease starting at the beginning of this month. So that'll show me how much I'm paying in total. But let's say there was an escalation written in and I knew that midway through the lease, after 30 months, it was going to escalate to $6,000 a month. I'm going to go over, I'm going to see that my payment of $5,000 for 30 months ended on 5/1/25. So I'm going to want to go over and say this new payment starts 6/1/25. And then again, it gives me that same end date. So any type of months where you're not needing to pay anything, or where you know there's going to be an escalation, you would go in and manually put that there. You can also delete if needed. And that brings us down to our classification wizard. If you hadn't required it and you know what it is, you can just select, I know that I have an operating lease. If you're unsure, or if an admin had required the classification wizard, you would walk through this. Is the ownership going to transfer to the lessee at the end? Are you reasonably certain to exercise a purchase option? Is there any alternative use to the asset? Are you going to be using this, this asset for more than 75% of its economic life? Or will you be paying more than 90% of its present value? If you answer no to all of those, you have an operating lease. If you answer yes to any of them, you have a finance lease. Select next. That brings us over to our GL account. It knows I have an operating lease, so it's pulling up the GL account. Again, we talked about how you could rename things under GL accounts in the administration tab. So this is what it looks like in the administration tab for me. One thing I want to show you is that you can add different cost allocations and cost centers. So let's say I know that I'm paying for marketing, office, and sales. My office is 45% of things. Sales is 33%. So that gives me 22% for marketing. It'll do that calculation for you. Then that brings us to variable expense and non-lease payments. So if you have any common area maintenance or CAM, you would go in and add that here. And then some people recommend to actually upload the actual lease. Here, you would go in and just select your file and upload it. Now it's tied to that lease, and your lease has been added. So you can see right here that it says incomplete, and I don't know why, which means that I must have skipped something. All right. Oh, you all saw me add that.
That was a different one, Abby. If you go back to the My Leases, it was the second one on the list, the 11 days till Christmas.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. That was something else. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. 11 days till Christmas. It's complete. Well, you see that if I hadn't completed it, it'd be marked as incomplete. Complete, marked as complete. And if I had put it in as review and approve, remember in that another admin tab where it was required, I didn't select it, but if I had, it would be marked as review. So we've added our lease, and now to run our reports, we can select the lease we just did. We can select all the active leases, or we can select just a few. We'll go down and select our start date and our end date. Let's just do about a year. And then we will run the report. So first is the journal entry. It downloads right here. And then it always opens on my other screen. But this is what that journal entry looks like. So these are going to be all of those inputs for those 3 leases. And one thing I want to note is at the bottom of all of our reports, there are these 3 tabs. There's the data itself, there's the criteria, and the leases that we pulled from. Next, that brings us to the amortization schedule. Select that. It downloads directly onto your computer in a spreadsheet. Here's that amortization schedule. Again, there's those 3 tabs down there. The footnote, you're going to select whether it was FASB or IFRS. And remember how we were talking about how it used to just be the maturity analysis, and now there's all of this other information in there. And then this last one, the all lease data, is just going to pull up the criteria and the leases that we pulled from. So that was our demo. The next steps are going to be reaching out to your Wagner contact and say, hey, I'm ready to get going, and they'll create your account. You're going to have access to on-demand training here where you can go in. It's a program that'll ask you what type of information are you looking for, and it'll give you a very condensed demo under 5 minutes of how to add a lease, how to run a report, how to make revisions, things like that. So it's a narrated step-by-step guide. If you need any help, there's access here. Then again, I'm going to challenge you to go in and create that reporting entity. That way, if you have any questions about your initial application date or anything like that, you can reach out to your Wagner contact. Then add your users and leases. We do have a weekly training webinar for new users. This will be a little bit longer than this call, much more in depth, more technical. So if you have more technical type questions, I definitely recommend doing that. And then any additional questions for LeaseCrunch, you can go and click here and submit tickets and email us. But yeah, so that's a lot of stuff at once. We did it in just about 20 minutes. And now I'm going to check and see. It looks like we have a couple questions in the chat. Will the wizard allow leases that started in prior years? So yes, but your initial application date is going to be that January 1, 2022. So all older leases are going to have that initial application date of 1/1/22. Did I say that right, Tim?
Yeah, so it'll
Okay.
depend on your organization or your company's fiscal year. So if we're talking about if your fiscal year is calendar year, it follows that. The standard application date is going to be 1/1/22, and then for all previously existing leases, that lease start date is going to be the exact same date, so 1/1/22. And then same thing, like let's say you're on a 6/30 fiscal year, so your start date is going to be 7/1/22. Any leases prior to that, the start date is going to be 7/1/22 as well.
Excellent. And then the next question is, does the software have a place to document fair value and useful life of asset when assessing operating versus finances? Yes. So that is actually the classification wizard. I didn't click through what each thing looked like, but if you were to have answered the questions, it's actually going to calculate what the fair value is or what the asset life is expected to be, and then it would help you calculate that and help you classify your lease. The cost of the software is a great question. Tim, I don't know if you wanted to answer that.
Yeah, I would, I guess I would, yeah, I'd encourage you just to reach out to your Wagner contact, and they can give you, cost information. It all depends on how many leases you have, to be honest with you, and kind of what the expected time commitment is from Wagner. So the software allows you, as Abby showed, to give you, the client, full access to it. Some clients are going to want that full access to go in and enter their leases. Other clients are going to want Wagner to help them enter their leases. So it all, pricing wise, all kind of depends on the situation, the scenario.
I do want to note though that it is encouraged to go through your CPA firm for pricing, because they always have special packages with us, and they're able to give you more competitive pricing than if you were to just go with us directly. Can this be purchased if not a Wagner client? Yes, it can. That would be going through us directly. Oh, where are they going? Subleases, we currently do not cater to subleases, but it is something that we are currently working on. Any other questions? I told you that would be quick. I hope that really showed you the ease of use. Yes, please reach out to your contact at Wagner if you're ready to go. Someone's asking if they should reach out to their auditor. So definitely reach out to your engagement team or whoever you have a relationship with. Say, hey, was just in this call. I am ready to get going. Getting you set up, they will create your account. You'll set up you'll either sign a document through them or through us, an agreement. And then again, I can recommend that you join the training or go through on-demand demos, but setting up that reporting entity and entering leases. So if you were to reach out today and say you're ready to get going, they could add you soon. You could start adding leases by end of week. Did I miss anybody? Reach out to, is there a person I can reach out to if not a Wegner contact? If you are not a Wegner contact, then you would just reach out. You can always just reach out to me directly, or I don't know, Tim, are there people that aren't Wegner
Not
clients
at the
on this
moment.
call?
I guess so. It sounds like it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have contact information in the slides that'll go out later.
Absolutely.
With Abby's contact, and I'll put my contact information in there as well.
Yeah. So usually questions with getting set up, I'm going to direct you to your Wegner contact. If you have software questions, technical questions, please reach out to support me. If I'm the wrong person, I'll say, hey, I got this, and then forward it to the correct person. Did I get all of these questions? Let me make sure. How do I enter if the lease increases annually? So that's where you would go in and edit that in your payment stream. These are great questions. I love all the engagement. This is like the most questions I've had. Tim, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we hop?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I guess I want to say thank you for everybody that joined today. Like I said, and Kristen said, slides will go out, this week, so everybody has them. If this is of interest to anybody on the call, please reach out to me, or please reach out to your Wegner contact, and we have a lot of information that we can provide you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.